Hello and welcome to another installment of the Indo-German Business Talk, hosted by the Indo-German Centre for Business Excellence. My name is Matthias Catón. I am the Deputy Chairman and Executive Director of the Centre, and today I will be your host. Today we will talk about the investment landscape in India and Germany, and as usual, I am joined here by an illustrious group of experts who will help me look at this important topic from different angles, and we will hopefully have an insightful and very interactive conversation here among the panelists, but obviously also including you as the audience. Investments are an important part of global economy, and India and Germany are no difference there. Germany is India's largest trading partner in the European Union and has been consistently among the global top 10 partners for many, many years. And that is also true for direct investment, where Germany is currently the seventh most important partner for India, with some of the investments ranging back more than a century. Some of the German companies who began establishing a presence in that country a long time ago and have a successful and also very large presence there. But it's not just German investments in India, it is also, and increasingly so, Indian investments in Germany, with now more than 200 Indian companies active in Germany in one way or another, often through mergers and acquisitions that companies did of, for example, mid-sized companies here in Germany. And we will look at all these topics. We will look at the opportunities, the challenges, the differences between investing in Germany, investing in India. And I think there will be plenty of questions and interesting topics that we will address in the next 60 minutes. To begin with, we would like to bring in the audience, and to do that, we have a question to you that you can access through slido.com. So what you should do is you should either go to slido.com and access our page by inputting the number, which is hashtag 2081787. Let me repeat that. Hashtag 2081787, or you should also see a QR code that you can scan with your mobile phone. And you will get a question about the Indo-German investment landscape, where you can type in your answers as a free text. While you do that, I will use the opportunity and introduce our panel. And I will do that in no particular order. I will start with Ambika Banotra. Ambika is the chief representative of the NRW Global Business in India. So she is representing one of the most important and largest states in Germany, North Rhine-Westphalia, in India, where she helps establish connections between India and the state of North Rhine-Westphalia. And this office is sponsored and supported by the Ministry of Economic Affairs, Innovation and Digitization and Energy of the state of North Rhine-Westphalia. Ambika has over 14 years of expertise in international and government affairs through various roles, advisory roles, and also functions that she played for the German diplomatic service, including a time she spent as senior advisor for political and economic affairs at the German Consulate General in Bangalore. Ambika, welcome, and we're very glad to have you here. Next is with me in our studio here in Frankfurt, Hermann Mühleck. Hermann is a partner at EY. He's also a chartered public accountant, or Wirtschaftsprüfer, to use the German word, and a certified tax advisor here in Germany. As part of the assurance team, he is responsible for audits and transactions of German and international clients. And his connection to India dates back primarily from his time from 2008 to 2011, when he established the German Business Centre in Mumbai. Hermann is still advising clients on operations and acquisitions in India and supports Indian companies in Germany. And thus he has extensive experience in this field and has also published on the topic. Welcome to our webinar.
Thank you.
Next, again, moving to the panelists online, we have Manoj Barve, who is the Indian representative or the India representative of BVMW, which is the acronym of the German Association for Small and Medium-Sized Businesses. Manoj is an SME evangelist, so his passion lies with small and medium-sized companies, and he has been championing the cause of Indian SME for a long time. He has over 30 years of global experience, and his career took him to several different countries with stints as, for example, the Director of Finance and member of the board at Alfa Laval, India. And he also had positions, for example, at ThyssenKrupp, India, which I guess doesn't count as a small or medium-sized company, but still, of course, a very important German company. Hydro Aluminium Deutschland in Malaysia, Eaton CEAG Sicherheitstechnik, ITT Richter Chemietechnik. Those do sound like mid-sized companies, PwC and McDermott Incorporated in Dubai. Welcome, Manoj, and we're also very happy to have you here on our panel. Then we have Rajnish Tiwari. He is also connected virtually. He is a professor of business administration and global innovation at the Fresenius University of Applied Sciences in Hamburg. He is also the co-founder of the Center for Frugal Innovation at Hamburg University of Technology. Rajnish has advised, among others, the German Federal Ministry of Education and Research concerning global innovation pathways, and he is one of the leading experts on Indo-German economic relations, and he is also, of course, as a professor, conducted several studies in this field. Welcome, and we're very happy to have you. And then finally, also joining me here in the studio is Dr. Amit Telang. Dr. Telang is the Consul General of India here in Frankfurt, and he has a long career in the Foreign Service, but he is primarily also a medical doctor, which is interesting. He started his career in the medical field, but then he joined the Indian Foreign Service in 2005. He has been posted to many different places, including a time in 2007 or 2007 to 2012 when he was at the embassy, the Indian embassy in Berlin as the head of the political wing. He has also been posted to Moscow, which I think comes in handy given the current political climate, gives him a lot of insight. And now he has been, for a couple of years, the Consul General of India in Frankfurt. He has been a very strong and ardent supporter of the Indo-German Centre, so we're very happy to have him here as an expert and also a friend of our center. Welcome. Good. So those are our 5 panelists, and I would now like to go back to the question that I posted and see what you came up with. So we're going to look at the Indo-German investment landscape. Okay, so the first question was, why is India attractive to Germany? What are the key factors attracting German investments into India? And we have a number of things here, ranging from yoga and Ayurveda, which are certainly interesting points that India has, but obviously also things such as, we have a skilled workforce, we have a market, we have educated population, young and skilled, we have the topic of digitalization, and so on and so forth. So we see that we have a pretty big market of opportunities, and I guess this is true both when we're talking about India as a market, but also, of course, about India as a target for direct investment. And I also see something like China. So this is also something that we might address here today. Obviously, the question, can India help countries such as Germany reduce or mitigate the dependency that the country is currently facing vis-a-vis China? Excellent. Could we move over to the other side then of the coin? What is attractive? Oh, okay. So that looks quite differently. We have one big item in the center, which I guess was mentioned several times, which is the German industry. That's apparently very interesting. It's an economically and stable country. It's a gateway to the European Union. Machinery, food, experience, R&D. Okay, so we see quite a lot of topics mentioned here that we can maybe pick up in the conversation. Excellent. Let me start off with Amit Telang, and I would like to know, given the recent turmoils that we see globally, has the relationship between India and Germany changed when it comes to direct investments in both directions?
Yes, certainly. In fact, it also proves from the infographic that we just saw in terms of what are the key points in terms of what Germans are looking at when the term India comes to their mind, and what are Indians looking at. And of course, the evolving global situation has had an impact. But more importantly, I would like to say that we have witnessed two very important visits, if I say over the last 3 or 4 months. We had the visit of Foreign Minister, Ms. Annalena Baerbock, in December, and she again visited for the G20 meeting. And we had, most importantly, the visit of the Honorable Chancellor to India. Both these visits actually also provide, in fact, a signal that there is increasing interest in Germany. And these visits have come at a very opportune time, because we are witnessing a change, evolution in the global landscape. And therefore, that interesting term which you mentioned, in fact, in the infographic, China +1, we are happy that, yes, there is interest in India, and India is being looked at as, an important partner. More importantly, if I have to give you a very focused input in terms of what has happened, when Chancellor visited, he was accompanied by a very high-level business delegation as well. And that shows that, there is interest, and a German industry, probably, I'm not surprised that the word industry appeared as probably the most, commonly used term when Indians thought about Germany. So industry, of course, is the center of this cooperation. The relationship has always had a very strong foundation of economic and, investment. So therefore, yes, definitely, Germans are looking more, I would say, definitely looking at India. They have been always looking at India, but probably during the present times, the relevance is even more.
Let me turn to Hermann Mühleck, who has been advising German companies for a long time when it comes to investment in India. What Amit Telang said, is that something you notice as well? Is there an increasing interest from German companies when it comes to investing in India?
No, actually, there is an increasing interest, but due to the Corona crisis, there was almost no interest, or maybe not no interest, but it was difficult to invest in India because the borders were almost closed. And what we heard from Mr. Telang is that this is the political angle. From an economic point of view, Germans were always interested in India. The cumulative investment inflows from Germany into India from 2000 to today were about 14 billion euro, which is a tremendous amount. And we had earlier already a lot of investments. Companies like Siemens, BASF, Bayer, they are in India since more than 100 years, and they are doing extremely well in India. So if we talk about the investment landscape, we have to see that there are companies which are doing very well, which have a lot of experience in India already. And there are, of course, a lot of companies who are now interested to also go to India. And there are several reasons to do that. It's the dependencies on China, which are a point which is very important. It is, let's say, caused by all these supply chain disruptions, issues with transportation we had in the past month and years. And all these points are now causing the German industry to look again to India. And if you see medium-sized companies in Germany, they are doing, and they did in the past, really well. So it is not that there was no interest in investing in India, but there was no necessity to invest in India because they were working really at their limits already. And that's the reason that they are really well positioned. And now, as we need again more growth, as we need to get out of these dependencies, I believe that we will also see more investments in India. But currently, it is only the interest which is increasing. There are really no big investments coming up from companies which have not already invested in India.
Interesting. Ambika, you, as I said, you work for the North Rhine-Westphalian Trade and Investment Organization. So your task is to help Indian companies invest in Germany. Similar question to you. Do you see an uptick of interest from Indian companies when it comes to investing in in Germany? And if so, why is that the case?
First of all, a very warm greeting from Bangalore to especially to all of you, Dr. Telang here and my colleague panelists. The discussion is very relevant, you know, the Indo-German business topics and all. And what I see currently, the trend is, and especially after pandemic, we are discussing that, of course, German industry presence is there. There are already 1,800 German companies present in India. So that itself shows the strength of Indian market. Of course, there are other regions also. But when it comes to from India to Germany, after pandemic, I think pandemic has taught everybody a lesson in various aspects, whether it's health, whether it's industry. And my colleague was mentioning about the diversification of supply chain. So we have seen a progressive approach or progressive queries from the Indian companies as well. And the reason behind these queries or these interests are because there is a win-win for both the sides. You know, from the Indian side, we have got queries or we have got the interest from the companies who can very well cater to the German market, right? And maybe if we speak about IT, ICT, if we speak about renewable energy, India has lots to offer, right? And same way, other way around, also German companies also want to collaborate in the field of tech collaboration, R&D activities. So yes, having said that, I would definitely say that, you know, and for, you know, a little bit about our organization, what we have done or what we have achieved so far in the last 1 year. And that itself is amazing that last 1 year, we have supported 7 Indian companies, bringing them to NRW, and those are from the various verticals, starting from IT, ICT, renewable energy, healthcare sector. So that itself shows that interest is developing, need is there to that matter, and there is lots of competence and expertise are there which can be shared. And both the companies from the Germany as well India are ready to exchange, to learn from each other, and I think that calls for a bright future ahead as well.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Ambika. And I want to remind our listeners that we want to bring in your questions, your comments as well. And you can use the Slido platform, which you can see here again, how to access it, to post your questions. And we will then bring them in and post them to our panelists here. So please start asking your questions and we will bring you in a moment. So we've heard now from a couple of experts on both sides, the investments by German companies in India and vice versa, Indian companies in Germany. Manoj, you represent the Association of Mid-Sized and Small Enterprises in Germany. Hermann Mühleck just mentioned that, of course, there is a number of companies who have a very, very long history in India, such as BASF, Bosch, the automotive companies, of course. Now, most of these are not SMEs. They are large multinational enterprises. What's the role of mid-sized companies? Do they also have this long trajectory that we've heard from, or is it a more recent phenomenon? How does that picture look like?
Yeah, good day, Matthias, and co-panelists and some viewers, and greetings from Pune. I'll briefly inform you about my association or about Mittelstand for our viewers. Mittelstand is a backbone. I mean, it has always been said Mittelstand is the backbone of German economy, German society. About 36% of sales in Germany take place with from the Mittelstand. 58% of value addition is done by Mittelstand, around 60% of employment, and most important, 80% of the trainees, apprentices are trained in the Mittelstand. About 1,300 of hidden champions in Germany come from the Mittelstand. And most of these companies are owner-driven and family-owned. So coming to your question, yes, of course, we have Siemens, we have Bosch, we have BASF, or even ThyssenKrupp, which have been dealing with India since more than 100 years. They have established their subsidiaries in India for many, many years or decades. So far as German SMEs or Mittelstand, as it's called, is concerned, Mittelstand has been very conservative all along. And it has started coming to India since early 2000, I would say, more, late 90s, early 2000. But the numbers have increased, numbers are increasing recently. Earlier, they came along with as tier 1, tier 2 suppliers of automotive companies or of machinery manufacturers or companies like Siemens and Bosch, because they typically go to supply their largest customers world over. So that way, a lot of companies came with Volkswagen and Daimler and other automotive manufacturers. But now the companies are coming, SMEs are coming to India on their own, on their own proposal to either, there are a couple of ways. I mean, they are coming either to explore or export the components, manufacture components and export them to Germany in order to have competitiveness, one thing. Secondly, they are coming to explore the growing Indian market with number of, middle class is growing and all. And thirdly, they are coming in order to get some services support, IT support, engineering services support from India. Yes, the numbers are increasing, but as I said, the companies are a bit conservative. So they need a lot of support in getting to know how to approach the Indian market, how to whom to contact, how to identify the right partner or right employees. And that is where a lot of consulting companies are also playing a big role.
Interesting that we see a change from mid-sized companies traditionally coming, as you said, under the coattails of a large multinational corporation, and now increasingly coming on their own. Amit, Telang, I know that you visit a lot of companies, big and small, and you travel a lot within the jurisdiction of your consulate general. When you talk to these companies, these small and medium-sized companies, what do they tell you? What are the pain points, or why are they maybe reluctant, or what are their hopes? Is that possible to summarize that in a way?
Yeah. In fact, I think what our colleague, Mr. Manoj Barve, has mentioned, it's a very important point. To an extent, yes, I do agree with the line of argument that, German companies are a bit conservative when it comes to fresh investments. But on the contrary, I would also like to share, since you asked me for my, experience after talking to German companies, I find that the main reason for this was Germany was focused more on certain markets. I think the first priority, of course, was the European market itself. Germany probably accounts for, and even now probably EU accounts for a big chunk of German exports. And so therefore, having a very secure market probably makes German industry, especially the small and medium-sized enterprises, to have a very secure I would say, a known kind of market, which they are fully aware of. So therefore, after that, of course, comes the North American market, then, of course, China. But what has happened, and that there I come to what our colleague Ambika Banotra said, the COVID pandemic and, in fact, the global situation has probably also prompted that the German industry looks at it differently. So you cannot be, always assured that everything is going to be fine, nothing is going to change. So because of the COVID pandemic, supply chain and other issues, there is definitely, I think, an awareness when I interact with the German industry. They are looking at options. And when they are looking at options, I think there are also some expectations. So I will also mention very briefly another point with which Mr. Barve pointed out, and that is about probably the information part. There would be interest, but we have to match that interest with the right information. And there, of course, people like Ms. Banotra, the NRW Global Invest, of course, their main mandate is to guide Indian investors, potential Indian investors who are looking at Germany. But there are other initiatives like the MIIM, which is focusing exclusively on Mittelstand. We have several other agencies, the consulates. And in that context, I think I must also mention, you mentioned that we have been cooperating, and I think this is a very important initiative which you have started. This is also a platform which provides information to a potential investor, not only to look at India as an option, but also in future, if it's possible, to give focused kind of information, like Mr. Mühleck mentioned and others, on taxation, on land acquisition, on very specific issues, so that this extra dependence which the German industry probably has on secure markets is something which we can work on.
Excellent. Yes, absolutely. When we created the Indo-German Centre about a year and a half ago, that was one of the reasons or the objectives, is that we wanted to establish an impartial platform based in academia, but very close to the real world, to help facilitate these informations. And of course, for those who are listening, who are interested in hearing more, what you, I think, have figured out by now is that all the organizations and institutions represented here today, and the individuals, of course, as well, they are in one way or another helping and working on these issues from different angles, and obviously they will also be available to reach out if you would like to know more about investing in Germany, investing in India, whatever it may be.
I would like to mention one point here. As Dr. Telang rightly said, information is extremely important. When I'm saying that the Mittelstand is conservative, it's not in negative sense. It's in fact the Mittelstand always thinks long term, so they are not, so they want to be informed about a lot of things before they make an investment, and they are not expecting profits immediately in first year or 2 years or so. But they make a long-term plan. They do a lot of market research before entering into a country. They get intercultural training, which is extremely important, and they are very much aware of it. And then they stay there for long, until they start seeing profits, seeing business, seeing advantages. So that is what I was meaning under conservative, that they take long, but it's a long-term investment.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, again, conservative does not mean it's not a positive or a negative thing. It's just a particular way of approaching things, which, maybe goes hand in hand with this long-term approach. Rajnish, Tiwari, you look at these things from an academic perspective, I guess, primarily as a professor, but you also created the Center for Frugal Innovation. Now, that intrigues me a lot. And I would like to ask you, in light of what we heard about German mid-sized companies and their particular approach, is there a difference when it comes to Indian vis-a-vis German companies, how they approach innovation, and maybe also connected to that, how they approach foreign direct investments?
Yeah, thank you, Matthias. I would say, yes, of course, you can see certain differences in the way how innovation takes place in India and how innovation takes place in traditional Western companies, especially also in Germany. There are, of course, also certain similarities, but the basic approach is traditionally in the Western markets, what you have seen is you have saturated markets and you have high purchasing power. So traditionally, the focus has been on creating innovative solutions that are rich on features, and they may be costing more because the purchasing power was not a major problem, not a major concern. So the approach has been rather like you create a product, you see what your costs are, add your margin to it, and out comes the price. Then you know for what price you can sell it in the market. The frugal innovation approach works entirely differently because you are dealing with markets that are very price sensitive. Price sensitive maybe out of constraints, maybe just out of voluntary simplicity because you have been raised in a context where you learned not to waste resources. So what you have to do is, if you are innovating for that market, you have to be very, very careful about selecting features that you want to integrate in that product. You have to be very much customer focused. You have to see what are the specific needs of the customer. And so like what you rather do is you have target costing. You say, okay, these are the features that I need to have, and this is the maximum price that I can get in the market. So actually the price becomes very important. Now you say, okay, this is the price, this is the margin that I can target. Then I know what are the maximum costs that I can allow myself. So the innovation approach becomes quite different. And this is something where we have seen a lot of potential. If you look at the research that we have undertaken, we have seen India develop into a sort of what we call in the innovation management, a lead market. So solutions that emerge in the Indian market are very likely in many instances to get a very positive response in other markets because you can find similar socioeconomic geographic conditions in other markets. And this is one thing where I see a lot of scope for collaboration between India and Germany, combining those technological capabilities in both countries. It's not just a one-way traffic in both countries, and gaining or taking advantage of the conditions that prevail in the Indian lead market in terms of solutions. And just one small thing about frugal innovations, for those of you who maybe have not heard of the term or are not familiar with the nuances of that. So what I call is that we live in a frugal age, and age I define as an acronym, affordable green excellence. So we are looking at excellent solutions, we are looking at affordability, and we are looking at environmental sustainability. So combining those types of solutions, that offers a tremendous scope for Indian and for German companies and for everyone actually, like whoever wants to get active in that market. So that would be my answer to your question. Thanks.
Great. I think this is fantastic because it's also about learning from each other. And of course, we are based here at a university, the Frankfurt School of Finance and Management. So we're all about learning and expanding our knowledge and our horizons. So that is excellent to hear. Ambika, you wanted to add something?
Yeah. So, Mr. Catón, I just wanted to echo what Dr. Tiwari has mentioned. See, frugal innovation, there is lots to collaborate between India and Germany. And when we say frugal innovation in India, they have given birth to, I think, almost 80,000 unicorns, right? Startups. And then we have recently, maybe I don't want to mention the names because still they are in process, but there's one example where the startup for the industrial AI, they are supporting the German company in NRW for their, operations, their, the day-to-day practice and all that. And that then happens, in the longer run, I think it's, again, I'm repeating the same sentence which I used the last time, that will be a win-win for both the sides, because frugal innovation is also a key driver which is supporting on one side or startup, but also it's bringing the startup and SMEs much closer. Yeah, thank you.
Excellent. Yes, I would now like to bring in the audience, as I said, and I think we have at least one question. So here it is. Due to various factors, we've seen an increase in bringing production home and markets being inward facing. Is this the case with either of the countries? Maybe let's move to EY and Hermann Mühleck as the expert. Do you see that when it comes to your clients?
I think this is difficult to say because and I think the reasons which we really see for different strategies of innovation, are the same reasons German companies are, for example, facing if they invest in India. And this is due to the variety of the Indian market. If you see, in India, you have about 400 million households. And about 10% of these households have a disposable income of about, let's say, more than 50,000 euro, which is not so different from Germany. Yeah, the big difference is that these households are spread over a huge country, which is 15 times the size of Germany. So therefore, it is difficult to really serve all the markets in India. And here comes now this strategy. If you want to have a product for India, it is not possible to have, let's say, one size that fits for all. You need to approach the different socio-economic classes. And these classes, they have different disposable incomes. We have people who, of course, would like to have an iPhone, but they can't afford it. They have a telephone which is, let's say, very simple, but it caters the needs of these people, and it's available for, let's say, 50 to 100 euro. Yeah, this is the big difference. And if German companies go to India, they need to have a strategy to really, get to the market, get their market participants addressed in India. And this is something where they really need good advice, need companies in India that know the market. And this cooperation then will lead to successful Indian market entry. But coming back to the question, I don't see it that currently the markets are really inwards facing. So in my point of view, the German companies are continuing business as usual. And you see this if our government asked the companies to, let's say, diversify investments. And if you really follow this, you would not see that 100% of capacities are now again invested in China, but maybe in India. And the big advantage of India as an investment market is it is a huge market. It is not, let's say, a market like Indonesia, where you have a lot of locations, a lot of different countries, a lot of regulatory requirements. India is one country where you really can rely on the regulatory requirements. Of course, there are also hurdles in India, but this is, let's say, the next best market in terms of ease of doing business.
Okay, that's interesting. Manoj, Barve, you are obviously representing a lot of those companies and also advising them in one way or another. Would you confirm what Hermann Mühleck said about the ease of doing business, or is there something or some fields where you feel that the Indian side could maybe still get better in terms of attracting German, particularly small and medium-sized enterprises?
Correct. I have slightly different opinion from Mr. Mühleck. The thing is that initially there was a lot of euphoria in India about the options the world is looking for China, which reduced or which became realistic to some extent with the global China plus one policy, and we are definitely benefiting from it. But some German companies, Mittelstand companies especially, who had gone to China for various reasons, of course, mainly for low-cost manufacturing, they are looking for nearshoring. I won't say that they are coming back to Germany with everything, because in Germany also there are challenges with high energy costs and overall high costs and skill shortages and all. But they are trying to balance between nearshoring and cost advantage. And for nearshoring, they might be coming to Germany, or they might be going to the Eastern European bloc, from where they can have certain supplies within 24 hours or 48 hours. At the same time, to have a long-term benefit and cost advantage and to maintain competitiveness, global competitiveness of German companies, they are exploring other countries also. Coming to your question about the ease of doing business, India has jumped. I mean, until a couple of years ago, they did this survey of ease of doing business, and India did a lot of progress on that. But many companies in the SMEs in India find on ground level that there are still some roadblocks. A lot of things have happened on financial matters. Ease of business has happened. Infrastructure has, in the meantime, improved quite a lot. Government is totally, industry facing industry. They are trying to support through, as Dr. Amit Telang said about MIIM, Make in India Mittelstand, which is the initiative of Indian government. They are the bureaucracy is supporting SMEs coming to India, but there are certain things which have to happen, which are not related to ease of doing business or government initiatives. Government has done Make in India program. They have given a lot of tax incentives, which Mr. Selig can tell you a lot more about that. But what we need in India to do that has to happen at a systemic level. We need to have more predictability. We need to have more skilled people, vocationally trained people, which are again the main reason for the success of small and medium-sized companies in Mittelstand companies in Germany. So we have to have that. We have to take long-term approach. So these are certain things which need to happen in India to get more Mittelstand companies to India.
If I may.
Yes,
Yeah.
please.
Yes. I mean, all the points which Mr. Barve made, and in fact, before that, Mr. Mühleck made, they are all very pertinent. But looking at the question, if I'm probably would like to digress a little bit, the thrust of the question probably is whether there is a thinking either in India or in Germany, this the phrase inward looking, whether, we should be more self-reliant, we should be producing it ourselves so that we don't depend on others, is something which is a very distinct trend. And I think if the person who has asked the question probably meant that, I would definitely like to mention that, yes, it is a natural reaction after COVID pandemic, because that was the phase when people felt that, there are serious sort of concerns when it comes to supply chain, and including major exporting countries, like Germany, which depends a lot on raw material availability. It is very important for them to be very secure that, their industry is not affected. So from that point of view, I think there was definitely a debate here in Germany, which I saw, and probably others would have also witnessed, inward looking kind of thing. But at the same time, I think the realization has come very fast that, we have come far ahead when it comes to globalization. We cannot go back to that time where, you are producing and you are self-sufficient in every sense. So therefore, I think it's a temporary phenomena. Both in India and in Germany, there is a realization that we are interlinked. We are dependent on each other. We have to work together. And therefore, everything else, the ease of doing business and other things, of course, fall in place. But most important thing is, yes, there was a tendency of inward looking. But I think if I see the trend over the last couple of months, people are overcoming that. And it's a very right thing to happen.
Okay, very, very interesting. And it seems to be that there are still forces pulling in both directions. I know that you also don't have a crystal ball, but there has been a lot of talk about a renewed enthusiasm for a free trade agreement between India and the European Union. What do you think? Will it come or not?
It should come. And in fact, that was one of the very important areas which was discussed during the visit, not only of Federal Chancellor to India, subsequently the Prime Minister of Italy also visited. And a lot of European leaders have been visiting India, which also shows that, there is interest in engagement. Not only major economies like Germany, Italy, France, but also in East Europe. We had visit from Croatia and so many other countries. And it shows that there is a requirement. As Mr. Barve mentioned, if we are looking at sourcing from East European countries and other countries in Europe, having an FTA is going to be a win-win situation. I borrow a phrase from what Ambika Banotra has been mentioning. And I think it is very much required. Of course, these are procedural issues. Industry has concerns. There are several stakeholders, and it is I would say, a complex exercise. But we are very much optimistic that FTA will happen. And I think there's no other way. When we talk about dependencies, it is important that we evolve a solution which is acceptable and beneficial to all sides.
Rajnish, Tiwari, you talked about frugal innovation and obviously also the learnings that in particular German investors can take from that by looking at how things are being done in India. When we turn this around, what do you think, what can Indian companies learn when they come to Germany, either as investors or as sellers of goods and services?
A very good question. See, I think in the past we have had a lot of Indian companies coming to Germany. There was a time around 2008-9, I think, where the activity was really very intense. Then some of them suffered some setbacks. Later on, I think many of them learned their lessons. Now investments are more streamlined, they're maybe better prepared. What people can learn, or what they probably would need to learn when they are coming to Germany, of course, like, you are coming out of your own cultural comfort zone. I think Mr. Barve already mentioned the importance of intercultural factors. So when you come out of your own cultural comfort zone, the first thing that you need to obviously take into account is to see what is the working culture of the place where you're going to, apart from the factors like, of course, you have a different cost structure, but you have to see, if you look at the cultural dimensions, what is the type of corporate culture that I have in India, and how would I like to have a corporate culture in Germany? Is it compatible? So if you go into those things like how do you deal with hierarchies? How do you deal with uncertainties? I think there is nothing right or wrong, but you have to see that there are maybe differences, and then you have to find ways to counterbalance them. So that is, I think, something which is very important. And when you come to places like Germany, you need to find out what is the right place for you to be at. So whether you should be going to NRW or within NRW to which place, or Hessen or Hamburg or Munich. So what suits your particular interest better? And for that, I think we have got some very, very good conditions now, better than 15 years back. We have a large base of India experts. We have many Indian students here in Germany now who have maybe certain experiences of their own. Also, Germany is learning many things about India. The interest in India has been growing. So I think basically what you can learn is when you are coming to Germany, to deal with cultural differences, to deal with bureaucratic and regulatory differences, to deal with the different geographic conditions. Many times that is also a challenge for people who are being just sent out on a deputation to Germany, and then to learn from the very good practices that you can have in the field of your business processes, your innovation processes. So I think there are many different things to learn from. Yeah.
Good.
Can't agree more with Dr. Tiwari. I mean, that intercultural aspects which we are talking about is extremely important. And I will give you an example. BVMW has an MOU with NASSCOM. You might know NASSCOM is something like Bitkom in Germany, one of the largest association of Indian IT companies. And Indian IT companies have proven their mantle all over the world. So now these companies with challenges in USA and business reducing margins are reducing. So they are trying to explore Europe, and Germany is the right place to come to Europe with digital transformation requirements in Germany, or Industry 4.0 support and other things. When I speak on their platform, on NASSCOM platforms quite often, I tell them that intercultural and language, understanding the Mittelstand, understanding the ground realities, that is what is more important for you. Your skill and your scale, both has been proven. So you don't need to prove that anywhere in the world. But what is important is what drives German thinking. What they want a long-term partner. They want a lot of involvement, meeting of deadlines, as Dr. Tiwari also mentioned. Understanding the customer for long-term. It's not transactional. Germany, all the relationships are generally for long-term, not transactional as in other countries. So understanding of those aspects is extremely important for the success.
I'll just add one point to it, because the interculture, when we are talking about last year, my journey with these Indian companies was similar, and we learn also along with their journey to Germany. So interculture aspect is of course very much prominent. Nobody can deny it, but I have also seen that business, find its own language. So when we connected these Indian companies with some economic development offices, chambers, organization, NASCOM was also there in NRW with the 25 members, industry members delegation. So at that end, when they have to have initial information, English is spoken very well, received also, and the question answer round goes very well. But when it comes to business development, or a little bit further to approach the market or the B2B basis, then of course they would, rely on some talent which can speak German. So for initial discussion, it's very good. It's very much framed in NRW. I mean, and as Mr. Tiwari mentioned that, you need to suggest them, the hand-holding is required. For major companies from India, it's going okay, it's going well. But for the SMEs and the startups, there the hand-holding is required to bring them to the right region, right, catering to their market, catering to their sectors. So intercultural, I would say maybe eventually these things also would do better. And the language part also, maybe there, I would say, bit challenges there, but the Indian companies are finding their way out, hiring the local talent there.
Thanks for putting this in perspective. And of course, I think the intercultural knowledge and experience always helps. I think we all know this, and I'm very happy that we have a lot of people here with that intercultural experience in our panel. So maybe this could go out as an encouragement to particular students who are maybe listening, German students. Use the opportunity to go to India, spend some time there, and likewise, of course, Indian students use the opportunity to come and study in Germany. But of course, intercultural competency is not everything that is required. You also need, as Ambika has mentioned, you need the information, the hard-nosed facts, and there, of course, shared language such as English helps a lot. I would like to go back to the audience because we have another question, and that question is the following. How do you see the German Due Diligence Act going to impact the investment decision of German companies in India and in the region? And I'd like to ask Hermann Mühleck first about his opinion on this.
So I think the good thing for India is that this German Due Diligence Act, this relates to each country. Yeah, so this means German companies have the same issues in China, in Indonesia, and anywhere else. And but I think so. Basically, and I believe this act is necessary, but it is not that German companies invested earlier in India in order to use this situation, and to employ people without the right security measures and all these things, which are, let's say, now considered in this Due Diligence Act. If people are working for a German textile company somewhere in India, and there is a building which breaks down, then these are, in the most instances, these are really, unlucky things which happened, because each of the German companies which is investing in India, which is producing high quality products in India, these companies, they have real quality measures. They want to have the best quality, and they have their suppliers which know about the quality, which know about the requirements, and which are, of course, going going real sustainable ways in order to produce in India. And the issue which comes in these cases is that one of these companies isn't able to deliver. And then an intermediary has to search for a different company to replace this part of production. And then there are some shortcuts. And in these cases, it is not well controlled. And I believe that German companies need to improve these processes of having all the line of production, let's say, controlled finally, and then we won't see a big impact of this Due Diligence Act, but it will become much more expensive.
Okay. We have another question from the audience, I believe. What are the key sectors that offer the greatest potential for Indo-German investment collaboration? So which sectors should we look at? And that is maybe a question that Rajnish Tiwari could help us shed some light on.
Okay, I think the question is so difficult. You just mentioned the crystal ball in the beginning. But I would say, for me, the question seems actually not that difficult, because I would say the collaboration potential is great or tremendous across the sectors. What I personally believe is that the Indo-German Economic Partnership is now undergoing a tremendous transformation, which was never there. For a very, very long time, we have talked about the great potential of India. But this potential was not really always tapped or not exploited, for the lack of a better word, not used. For the first time now, we have this opportunity, partly arising out of the geopolitical situation, but the economic development in India, the developments around the world in terms of finances, etc., digitalization, IT technologies, the interaction between Indian students, etc., and the German students here. So what I see is that a market like India is growing across all the sectors. We need investments in the infrastructure, improvement in that field. We need in the consumer market, in the industry, in the services. So this is like where you can see tremendous scope across the spectrum, and where you can collaborate. So like there is a cross industry collaboration through use of different technologies. So basically, I would say you can use your potential irrespective of what sector you are in. So, but my colleagues will be definitely able to pinpoint maybe some sectors which are, from their perspective, more important. But I'm basically convinced that this goes through the sectors.
Okay.
Thank you.
Looking around, is there anyone here on the panel who would say that one particular sector is more important or has more chances, or do you agree?
I think, yeah, sorry.
Ambika?
Yeah, I think I'll again give an example of one of the Indian companies who have opened their operations in Essen for the renewable energy. And I would say that looks also very promising, looking at the need of the hour. IT/ICT is already present. Digitization is one key driver which is bringing Indian and German industry closer. Manufacturing industry 4.0 is there. Coming back to Dr. Tiwari's thing, that across the sectors there are immense potential. But renewable energy is also, I think, we should focus bringing Indian and German counterparts together.
Good.
Yeah. Please.
So maybe we should go back and see what was, let's say, with Indian companies in Germany earlier. So if you see the current footprint of Indian companies in Germany, Indian companies in Germany make 40% of the total revenues in Germany in the metal sector. This was because in the 70s, the last century, a lot of Indian companies invested in this sector particularly. The next one is automotive, because there is a huge affinity, which is, let's say, caused by access to technology. This is the motivation. A lot of Indian companies come to Germany. And then we have the sectors, the chemical industry and pharmaceuticals, and of course also services. But what Mr. Tiwari said, and this is really a valid point, It is changing because due to investments of India now in German startups, due to investments of Indian companies in, let's say, German Mittelstand companies, which are looking for successors, this is really changing in terms of the sector, which is doing well.
Yeah, in fact, everything what you said, I entirely agree. Even at the risk of choosing one sector, but since the question was very specific, I would like to say that one sector, which is, of course, we find very promising, and sitting as we do here in the Frankfurt School of Finance and Management, I would say education. And when I talk about education, there are two aspects to it. One is vocational education, of course, as somebody had mentioned in the infographic. The second thing is higher education. So these are the areas where I would say that Germany probably should look at it as an investment area, because if we look at the trend right now, many of the leading universities in the United States, in the United Kingdom, in Australia, and other countries are coming to India, and they are creating institutions. Now, why is it important? Because firstly, in context of Germany, when we talk about the deficit of skilled manpower and also the entire demography, I think if we are talking about skilled people and intercultural issues and all that, presence of German institutions in India, which produces not only in terms of engineers and managers and everything, they also provide a very important input. So tomorrow, if somebody plans to migrate to Germany and assume an important position in Germany, they are used to and they are fully aware of what are the requirements of the German market. How does it function? What are the peculiarities of this market? So I would say that education is one sector where Germany has a lot of potential, but unfortunately, it is always the inflow what we are looking at, which is the right thing to do. But probably German universities and leading institutions should also look at investing in India. And that will be an important area for investment.
Very interesting. Thank you very much for pointing this out. And obviously, as a representative of a higher education institution from Germany, that is very close to the things that we are looking at and that we're interested in. Finally, maybe Manoj, Barve, when you look at medium and small and medium-sized companies, do you also see specific interest from certain sectors that are maybe bigger than from others?
You're talking about Indian companies coming to Germany? Then, I mean, so far as in German companies coming to India with investments, as Dr. Tiwari mentioned, the interest is across the board. Of course, mainly you come as a tier 1, tier 2 supplier of a large German company, but the interest is increasing in every domain because we need a lot of machinery, we need a lot of technology, we need a lot of tools, everything. The way India is growing, all these things are required. For Indian companies or coming to Germany, I'm seeing the interest is increasing in automotive sector. Definitely you get by acquiring or by investing in Germany in a small size tier 1, tier 2 supplier, you get access to the large OEMs of Germany. That is one factor. For pharmaceutical companies, again, there is a lot of regulation in Germany. So Indian companies coming and investing in Germany gives them a foothold to learn best practices as well as access to the pharmaceutical markets. Now I'm seeing the big trend of Indian IT companies coming there and supporting Germany in digital or willing to support in digital transformation in Industry 4.0, in simulation and all other manufacturing related IT services, engineering services also is there. And again, another conscious trend is that due to succession factors, a lot of German Mittelstand companies are facing challenges. So Indian companies are trying to get a foothold there by, identifying the proper candidate with whom either it can be a horizontal or vertical collaboration and integration or getting technology. And continue to manufacture in Germany and continue to supply. So that way, and to have a company in Germany is a very good reputation. To have a partner, German partner, is a very good reputation for Indian companies. Also, you get good technologies, you get good business practices, to learn from. So a lot of good Indian companies, technology-driven, quality-minded, and innovation-focused companies are coming to Germany increasingly.
Good. Excellent. We are already out of time, as it should be. There is plenty of more that we could discuss. We could probably go on for a long time here with interesting topics. I would like to thank, first of all, my 5 panelists here a lot for their contributions. I would also like to thank the audience, you, the viewers. I hope you found it interesting, you found it enlightening, and of course, the institutions that were represented here today, they are all available to help you out with advice, with more information when it comes to investing in Germany and investing in India. Thank you very much for being a part of today's episode. Thank you very much and have a great day.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.